That's my point.
Okay, all right. You get the last word as always. Ladies and gentlemen, students from all around the world, welcome to another great episode of Professor Kimya's class. Today we're dealing with William Julius Wilson, Interlocking Race and Class. This one is going to be something for me because I really don't know much about William Julius Wilson, but I know he said some things about us being poor. So let's learn. Let's learn. All right, Doc, in your capable hands.
Okay. So Dr. William Julius Wilson is a sociologist, as am I. I'm a sociologist and a criminologist. And he's still alive. He's in his 80s, which I'll talk about that. And he is emeritus professor at Harvard. So he's retired, but he's still very much appreciated by some of us who appreciate his work. So here I'm having a discussion of interlocking race and class, and I'll explain why he addressed it. All right, so here's the shared Google Drive link. I know that Brother Varner is going to put these links for the PowerPoint slide and the shared Google Drive, which also has my writing about hip hop in there with you all. So William Julius Wilson is 89 years old, Harvard University, Department of Sociology, emeritus. And he's most known, a lot of times people will say he's most known for the book Truly Disadvantaged, but he's actually most known for The Declining Significance of Race, which was a 1978 peer-reviewed journal article, which you can still get from the library. And then it was a 1980 book. Now, when I was in the doctoral program, I think it was probably 2004, 2005, I actually read the book and did a presentation in one of my classes. And in the presentation, I explained that based on the title, I'm sure perhaps the title was selected because it was going to grab attention. And unfortunately, even my own colleagues, a lot of my colleagues in sociology did not read the book. They just did not like this notion that race is not significant. And again, William Julius Wilson is a black man and a sociologist. So this is an example of our people, whether you're colleagues in the same discipline or just black people in general, we really need to, it's okay to disagree, but we can't close so many doors with each other. So that's one of the issues that William Julius Wilson has had with a lot of people not understanding, open the book beyond the title. Okay, open the book beyond the title.
Okay. So, here's the question.
Mm-hmm.
Why is people so upset that race may be declining in significance? Why are we so tapped in and worried about and wanting to defend the fact, or the opinion that race is still important? Why are we so wrapped up in that? Why are we?
Because that's a reality, and as sociologists, particularly black sociologists, we address issues of race. Now, of course, I teach 20 years sociology of race and ethnic relations. When we teach race as sociologists, as particularly black sociologists, we teach about the origins of racial categories in Europe that shape the Eastern Hemisphere, then the Western Hemisphere. So race is not synonymous with racism. It's not synonymous with racial injustice. I always want people to understand that as black people, particularly those of us of African descent, being black does not mean we wake up oppression and we walk around all day oppression. That's not what blackness means. As Africans around the world, that's not what we have in common. That's not our common denominator. That's a component of issues, but that is not our identity and not the common denominator. So race is still relevant in terms of how it shapes our culture. And every culture, since the origins of humans, for all humans, has good and bad that come with it. Culture includes the stuff that you don't like that people do. And a lot of times people think that just because they don't like it, it should not be a component of the culture. But that's not how humans operate. A component of our culture will include things that people don't like. So the declining significance of race is actually about, for people who read the book, or at least the article he did many, many years later. So again, he wrote the journal article in 1978, then he did the book 1980. I read the book for the doctoral program. I understood what he was saying. I think the title of the book was to reach a certain audience. And then he did a piece called The Declining Significance of Race, Revisited and Revised, and that's a peer-reviewed journal article, 2011. And all of that is in, not the book, but the articles are in the shared Google Drive folder there.
Okay.
And so, yeah.
And we'll have that ready for y'all. It'll be in the show notes.
Yeah.
It'll be in the show notes.
So again, I say that it's often misinterpreted as him claiming that race is not significant or less significant, but I think that's a false interpretation of what Dr. Wilson was explaining. He was saying race is still a factor because, again, when you read all of his work, he's talking about black people. So you can't talk about black people. You can't talk about any group of people because racial categories are now more than 5 centuries. So you can't talk about any group of people, even if you don't know the racial category, because you're like, I don't know what you fit in. It's still something that they fit into in different spaces. I mean, that's true. You have some collectives of people who are proud that they can be considered white in some spaces. They can be considered native, indigenous in another space, Asian. And I'm like, that's kind of weird to feel proud about that. But that's an example, though, of how people get in where they fit in. And it's still race, though. So it's not like Wilson was saying race is not important. What he was really saying when you read it is class is increasing in significance because he was addressing poor working class blacks in the inner city. And then, of course, the issue regarding middle class blacks as well.
Okay.
Yep. So that's where the truly disadvantaged comes in. So that's the 1987 book where a lot of people celebrate him more because they're still mad and feel some type of way about the declining significance of race. I tell people, let it go. All right. So truly disadvantaged is where he talks more about culture. So that was another one of the critiques of William Julius Wilson as a sociologist. As sociologists, we talk about culture. We're talking about there's a process of learned behavior, so there are components of social psychology in the work that we do, but we're looking at it in terms of social interactions, socialization, and that does shape the learned behavior. And unfortunately, a lot of times initially, William Julius Wilson would talk about class status, poor working class, occupation, and so forth, without addressing the culture factor. So that's when, and truly disadvantaged is when he got further into addressing culture, highlighting culture. How is it shaped by culture? Mm-hmm.
Well, I haven't read it, but who are the truly disadvantaged according to him? Or is that, am I making an assumption based on the title?
Well, the truly disadvantaged is he's looking at particularly poor blacks in the inner city. That's what his work is regarding. You can look at that in terms of the issue regarding class. And you have to understand, if you understand William Julius Wilson, which I'll talk about later as well, he's looking at this in terms of the problems. The problems are the institutions, the problems are the government. And I'll talk about that more.
Okay, all right. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Okay, yep. All right. So I guess this is a lead-in. This is the lead-in, right?
It is a lead-in. That's why I say William Julius Wilson is quite interesting. Can you go back to another slide? I want to make sure that I just explain. Yeah, so the culture part, and then of course this is also the book where he tackles the black middle class, and the black middle class being a model for poor working class blacks in the inner city. Okay, so what are people to think about that? Because I know our people are quick to feel some type of way. And I get it. But you have to understand W.B. Du Bois' talented 10th. Contrary to what a lot of people falsely claim, because we got entire books about this nonsense, Du Bois was not doing ethnic cleansing for poor working class black folks. So the same applies to when William Julius Wilson says this, okay? There are components of culture that include, when we're talking about socioeconomic status, is influence. So the idea that many blacks over the centuries have addressed, including William Julius Wilson, is the role of black middle class in having these good interactions, resources, And that's actually true when you're looking at even Marcus Garvey's role, when he was talking about the building of our people. And of course, some would be potentially going to West Africa and doing those developments, but he was really talking about entrepreneurship. He was, yes, reaching poor working class, but he was also addressing that you don't have to be born poor and die poor. What are some ways that we can develop? And you would see that from a middle class standpoint. Now, middle class, you have to understand, doesn't necessarily mean upper middle class. Most middle class people in general across the race are living paycheck to paycheck, and it's not because they've just adopted more expenses. And so this is just something that black middle class, whenever people talk about when you get some money, people act funny and they start moving into the county area. And that's where you can, in this sense, compare the black middle class to what we talk about when we talk about the central business district and criminology and sociology, what it means when you have the central part of the cities that are the industrial zones, the places where people who migrate to the United States of America initially move, where poor working class people live. And then when people get money, they oftentimes will want to leave those places. And we also talk about this in terms of capital flight, white flight. What does it mean when white people started moving into the county areas along with businesses more than a century ago? So it is true that black middle class, some people will stay in the neighborhoods in which they were born and raised.
Okay.
But many people, when they get a job, and you see that now in Baltimore City, people, literally, the city is like walking distance from the county in some areas. So there are some people who say, look, when I get where I'm trying to go, I'm not going to live in this part of the city. I'm going to move 5 minutes away, 10 minutes away, 15, 20, 30 minutes away in the county. The idea is you're going to see more grass. The idea is you're going to see more police presence because of Baltimore County Police Department and other things.
Well, they want to move to more police?
Well, no, they want to move to a police department who they consider less controlling but more helpful. And that's the depiction of city police versus county police. And that's across the nation, not just in Baltimore. I want our people to understand that a lot of our people are trying to find a form of escape. And that's why a lot of times when people get an education, make money, and they're talking about leaving areas, people are like, you're just going to leave us hanging, or you're not going to come back. And so what William Julius Wilson was looking at here, and other black scholars and black activists have talked about, is do you just leave? Because if you leave, most of us are leaving our families. You know, most people have families, friends, and all that. So it's not like people are really leaving behind, but you can't just show up for the cookout and the party, right? It has to be consistent. If you now have money and resources, even if you're not wealthy, because your salary has not really gotten that high, you don't have a big savings account, now you're saying we're going to do the strength of ties. That's the whole human capital, social capital, cultural capital. Now we're going to see who can we help to get access to resources. Who are we going to help with some job training resources and other components there. So that's something to think about with the truly disadvantaged when understanding the role that black middle class can play. And you can compare it with what Du Bois said regarding the talented 10th. He has different writings to address that. You can also tackle that regarding Marcus Garvey, because Marcus Garvey was addressing collectives of people who many were considered intellectuals and middle class at that time.
Okay.
All right, so this is Wilson's response to hip hop and black culture. So I do have a piece on my shared Google Drive, and I was also interviewed to talk about this a few weeks ago because I shared this on social media. And I talk about hip hop every day. I think about hip hop constantly. I got a lyric for everything. I teach hip hop and I do presentations.
Hold on. You got a lyric for everything.
I have a lyric for everything. So
okay, you like the KRS-One. You got a lyric for every MC out there.
Yeah, that. But I'm more of the GOAT Rakim / with Nikki D. You know, I'm letting off steam like Nikki D. You know, that kind of thing. Yes. So,
Okay.
So here's the thing about.
Yeah, I don't think most people know about letting off steam by Nikki D.
That's because they slept. They need to. And you can follow Nikki D on social media, by the way. And she has so much knowledge. She also has some statements where she releases, if you are a new hip hop artist, you can contact Nikki D and see if Nikki D can help you. And it's all types of things that wonderful Nikki D is doing. And you can also see it when we talk about our women in hip hop, that what they're doing as a collective to address the role of women in hip hop. So,
all right. Shout out to MC Light, my favorite. That's my fave.
Yes, MC Light. I have a range of favorites, so you'll see me talk about that a lot too. So yeah. So because you and I could have a whole entire show about hip hop, because that's actually, so when I wrote the piece about hip hop and black culture, I wrote it about Harold Cruz, Thomas Sowell, and William Julius Wilson, and I talked about, we don't know what Harold Cruz said about hip hop, because although he died in 2005, there's no record of him talking about hip hop. So in that piece, I kind of theorized about what he would have said, because like we have conscious hip hop, but Harold Cruz appreciated consciousness, but it can't just be talking about Africa. It has to be, we are Africans and we're here. So what are we building here? What are the resources we have? It can't be everybody stare at Africa, go back to Africa, because Harold Cruz himself stopped focusing on Africa because he was like, I can't leave my people hanging here and everybody talking about going back to Africa. What you doing for your people next door? And that's also why Harold Cruz left the American Communist Party, because the American Communist Party and communism in general, it pretends to be race neutral, and they don't care about black people. I tell people that all the time, but that's another side topic. So
that's another show. We definitely gonna have to do a show on that.
Yeah, because you know, conscious hip hop, and then we have hip hop like my favorite groups like Smith and Wesson and Camp Lo. They might have some consciousness in their some lyrics, but they're not conscious hip hop. Harold Cruz critique them as well because they've got some negativity in there. So the question would be, how is it really developing our resources? So with that in mind, if you think about this, what I said about Harold Cruz, William Julius Wilson did have a piece that I have in the shared Google Drive folder where he acknowledges hip hop as a component of black culture. He was looking at it in terms of particularly black inner city poverty, and he acknowledges that other researchers have addressed it in terms of what it means to be out partying, drinking, using drugs, crime. And he says, okay, we can see that there could be some negative impact of hip hop, but I'm thinking about Harold Cruz again. But William Julius Wilson, although he acknowledges the potential negative messages that shape our culture in hip hop, he says we don't want to overemphasize that. So that's why I have it up here. He disagrees with saying hip hop did it, and you can think back of the days of people back when we were still listening to cassettes and 8-tracks and stuff like that. People throwing and burning stuff, burning 2 Live Crew and burning NWA. And look here, my brothers and I, we were in there singing we were doing all of that, memorizing it, and
watching Kendrick's performance made me think of Geraldo's statement about hip hop has done more damage to black and brown youth than slavery did.
Okay. Well, I mean, I used to be a fan of Geraldo Rivera when he had his show, but he went down the road after the show.
Used to be.
Yeah, and of course I didn't watch the Kendrick Lamar performance because I don't watch NFL, I don't watch Super Bowl. So I always tell black people, don't announce that you're boycotting Target if you're watching Super Bowl and NFL in general, because we talk about how our people are exploited by these sports and all that stuff, but you want to boycott something when it's the attention grabber on news stations and social media. Boycotting and really doing some real changes as a people, it can't be when it's the popularity contest version of boycott, because you've announced it to the oppressor that you're boycotting them. You think they care about your announcement when you've already announced it. So it has to be something consistent. So I don't watch that, but I respect those who do, and I respect the artists who know how to manipulate the system. I appreciate Samuel Jackson at all times, and it works for what it is. So yeah. Hey,
well, like you said at the very end, game over. We're not playing anymore, and
game over.
Game over. We're not playing anymore.
Mortal Kombat going game over. Well, I mean, let's be honest. And Mortal Kombat's one of my favorite video games, by the way. I'm gonna be honest. Black people cannot announce that we're not playing anymore when it's the same cycle. It's the same cycle. So if you gonna go through the same cycle, then you are still playing. Because those of us who've explained the cycle changing, we get a lot of outrage because
you really stopped playing. Because you really stopped playing. You really took your balls and your rackets and you left the court.
Well, and I'll talk about that regarding racial integration, because that's a component that when we talk about Harold Cruz, William Julius Wilson, Thomas Sowell, Du Bois, Ida B. Wells, I talk about her in hip hop. I said if she was still alive and she was an MC, she would be like top list MC. She would be at the site. Bahamadia. And because she, and also Ida B. Wells loved firearms too. But she was like, y'all ain't messing with me.
Oh, well then she's Heather B.
I was thinking it would probably be more like a Heather B.
Yeah.
But, that one video where she's on the bus, I'm like, ooh, she about to get somebody. But so I just want our people to understand: stop announcing it's not over. We don't believe you when you have to announce.
We need more people. Yeah, okay. I'm sorry.
I can't say I do not like Jay-Z as a rapper. I've explained that for 20 years and people want to fight me. But yeah, so it can't be we're not, like, why is it not over? Because you've seen Kendrick Lamar perform, because you're boycotting a store. Like, in your mind, why is it not over? Because you are shocked by a particular election. You got to understand, these problems did not get created with this new election. These are constant problems that every president does. And I've explained that in our previous shows where we talked about the presidents, right?
Right.
These problems do not vary by political party. They just become more overt. They change the focus. But all of these politicians are doing bad things that they're hiding behind the good things. So black folks are still playing. And the oppressors on both sides, the ones who are supporting these black radical groups and the ones who are opposed to the black radical groups, they love this game. Because it's going to be the same routine over and over again. It's predictable. It's like playing cards.
Well, like Uncle Sam said, welcome to the great American game.
And this is a global game. So our people just have to understand that it's the same nonsense. Every so often our people say, we're done in every election. And I'm like, look here, you got to be consistently done while also understanding that all humans have hypocrisy. You're going to be opposed to one thing, but you're going to be in favor of another thing that is hypocritical to your opposition to the other thing. That's the same thing we talk about our trailblazers. If you understand Marcus Garvey and all of them, they were in favor of some things that you'd be like, dang, how could they do that? Because that's the complexity of existing every day beyond just writing something down in theory. Real life is complex like that.
Right.
So that's a component that William Julius Wilson was addressing, because he was looking here, of course, as a sociologist, looking at structural but also actions and outcomes. So that's why he wanted to not overemphasize culture to the point where you say it's all culture to blame. Instead, he was like, no, we still got to hold institutions, organizations, and of course, government intervention accountable. So you can go to the next slide, please. All right, so this is where William Julius Wilson finds the government to be the role of intervening and solutions. All right, so this is where I talk to our people, and I love my people so much. I've dedicated my life and my career to our people. So I'm going to have this face-to-face, loving conversation. I'm going to do it like a Septima Clark. Well, Septima Clark is different. She didn't have a loud voice. If you watch her interviews, you got to listen closely, because Septima Clark had a very low voice. I don't have a low voice. So that's the thing. So William Julius Wilson, being still alive, member of the Democratic Socialist Party. Member of Democrat. I'm saying it again, everybody. Everybody listen up. Member of the Democratic Socialist Party. I want our people to understand the meaning of socialism.
Whoa. You did say Democratic Socialist Party.
Yes, that's socialism. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. I'm cool with it.
Okay. You're cool with it. All right. So this is where I want our people to understand the meaning of socialism. So if this was a classroom, I would say, so scholars, what is socialism? And what would you say?
I'm thinking Dead Prez talked about socialism as being I can't think of the phrase they use. I can't quote them, but the reason that I'm okay with it is because I don't necessarily think that the concept of the government making sure that everyone has what they need is a bad thing. And so, from my understanding, socialism is the federal government, the overseeing authority, ensuring that the resources are distributed in a manner that everybody gets what they need.
Okay, y'all. All right, so let me
So is that an A, B, C, or is that an F?
I'm going to give you a 0 and let you rewrite it. Rewrite it and resubmit it. Because it's so much more complex than that. Because that's like the romance novel version. That's the romantic version that, so, okay. There's different parts of this. So, one, when our people read W.B. Du Bois's Dusk of Dawn, that's when he presented his cooperative economic plan. And that's, of course, what Harold Cruse developed from further. So when you read The Dusk of Dawn, W.B. Du Bois, he talks about it from the New Deal perspective. The New Deal is an example of how European governments, including the United States of America, USA is still the most capitalist of the nations, but USA and other European nations integrated their capitalism with components of European socialism. So the European socialism components is how we're able to have tax-paid resources such as veterans benefits, disability services, SNAP, EBT cards, and so forth. So there are already components of socialism, and Du Bois addresses that when writing about the New Deal and his cooperative economic suggestion, and Harold Cruse has his suggestions as to how the economic system can change as well. So I always tell our people we already have components of European socialism. Here's something else I want our people to understand. I am not a fan of Eldridge Cleaver because he became obsessive, talked about raping black women to prepare to rape white women and all types of nonsense. So I use Kathleen Cleaver's work for my class, and I don't use Eldridge Cleaver. But I will say the one thing I give Eldridge Cleaver note for doing is that he admitted that when he did global travels, he had this romantic idea of socialism and even communism, as did most black radicals back then, and some do now. He had this idea that you show up to a socialist nation or a communist nation and it's like welcome mat and things are just so awesome. You have to remember it's government control. So when he came back to the United States of America, unfortunately he became Republican and all types of nonsense. But he was honest to black people that this is not what you think it is. You got to understand places like Russia, communist places like Russia, even places like China. There's a reason why there are people there who try to migrate to the United States of America. And you want to understand when they're basically sending like a tourist attraction to people and saying, we're awesome, advertising themselves to us. The notion, if you actually get there, and I know people who've done study abroad in Russia, and there were skinheads there who did things like push black people onto snow, all types of stuff. So this romantic novel of socialism is something that I really want our people to learn beyond that, because when you interview or even just do daily interactions with most black people are opposed to government intervention to the point where it's control of the government, right?
Right.
So I tell people, you don't have access to the government by phone. So you can't call them and be like, yo, you a little bit in my face a little too much. So once you want the government there, they're there, okay? Right?
Right,
okay.
Right. Yeah, you call the cops, they're coming.
Okay. And
in some cases,
the cops are supposed to be there, but they're supposed to do the right thing, right? They're supposed to do what they're supposed to do and not harm anybody, and that's the difficult component. But yeah, so that's the thing about government, having the government to control you, because that's what socialism is. Communism is even more than that, but that's what socialism is. So when they say that it's going to be funded through the government, that's funded through us. We pay for everything. The government is not like some cloud in the sky.
So is that a form of socialism?
Socialism is government funded because it's tax funded. Like taxpayers are the ones who pay for their salary, and we're the ones that pay for the services. We pay for local, national, and global services. We're the ones whose money is used to pay for military gear locally, nationally, and around the world. Our money is used to pay for global wars. Our money is used to pay for all this stuff. That's not from their salary in the sense of directness. It's from our taxes. So I want our people to understand, when you say that you want more government intervention and you want 100% socialism, you have to understand most socialist nations have started to integrate components of capitalism because they wanted to pursue more profit. Because socialism reduces the profit, just like communalism. Like we talk about Julius Nyeri's communalism. He noticed that his communalism did not work because after a while it can't just be consensual, because you can't just change your mind like, oh, I changed my mind about this form of government. Now it's yours. You know, you're a citizen. This form of economics and government is yours now. So that's where it becomes policed, militaried, and government controlled, right? So the same thing with socialism. You go to particular European nations and 50% of your income goes back to the government. Ask most black people if they would want something like that, such that 30, 40, 50% of their income goes back into the government. And they will tell you HELL no. So don't say you want socialism without understanding that we already have components of socialism. That's how we have certain tax breaks and tax incentives and resources. Whenever someone says this is free, it's not free, it's paid through taxes. Because taxes can go into mayor's offices, governor's offices, the White House, give grant funds for nonprofits, resources in communities. So whenever someone says this is a free clinic to do this, it's sometimes we pay out of our own pocket to provide services for our people, but a lot of times free, when it's on the government title and they say free, like talk about healthcare. People love to worship nations around the world that say healthcare is for everyone. It's for everyone because
it sounds good. Control. It sounds so good.
It's for everyone because it's paid through taxes, it's government controlled, and you don't get to pick and choose where you go to get the services, right? So it could be the worst services ever, but that's now no longer your choice. So I also have a piece on the Thomas Sowell shared Google Drive where Thomas Sowell addresses the healthcare system, and I respond to that because we have to understand whenever you want something free, the free is quotation marks because it's paid through something, which is our taxes usually. Okay. And if it's like that, then understand you're not going to have the same freedom of being able to pick and choose on your own. Okay. And I always tell people, I'm not telling you what to think and what to want. I want you to make intellectual choices because we are African intellectuals, okay? We're not a stupid people, okay? We are beyond just marches and protests and shouting at the popo. We are a knowledgeable people. So you have to understand what socialism means. So with William Julius Wilson being a member of the Democratic Socialist Party, that's why he overemphasizes the role of class, because that's a component of socialism and communism as well. It's this huge impact of class, and it oftentimes depicts reality as race neutral. Like race is not a component, nor is anything else. It's just class, class, class. That's why William Julius Wilson updated it himself and started addressing race more, because he had to acknowledge he's specifically talking about black people. Therefore, race is important, right? So, again, socialism is based on government being the cause of certain issues, therefore government better solve the problem. It's okay to want the government to be a problem solver, but they cannot be the only source of the problem solver, because that means you are 100% relying on the government. The same way I tell our people, you do not want the funds to go to the police department and therefore the police are funding your cookouts and your basketball tournaments. Then that is not black liberation, right?
No, it's not.
That's nothing to be proud of. And there's a lot of black organizations where their funds, their grant funds, are distributed by the mayor's offices into the police department, and then it gets to the black nonprofits or the black religious institutions. It's okay to see that as a quick fix, but that can't be your lasting solution for black evolution, as Harold Cruz explains. That can't be it. Because if you're talking about wanting to be liberated and not controlled 100%, then your controller is the one who's bringing it in, and therefore the outcome has to be what they want.
Right. Okay.
So I want all black people around the world for the rest of human existence
all
to
y'all
understand. And there's a lot of writings about this over a century, but most of these organizations that people pride in reading together, they're not talking about the pros and cons of every economic system and government system. They'll talk about the problems of capitalism, but when the topic is communalism, socialism, and communism, they romanticize it. It's like, La La Land together, instead of saying these are government controls, because you lose the ability to opt out of many things, because it's saying, okay, this is what's going to make us better as a people, therefore you have to contribute to it making us better. And this is the amount we're going to tell you to contribute.
Okay, but he walked away from the Democratic Socialist Party.
No, there's no record of that. Harold Cruz walked away from the American Communist Party.
Okay.
But there's no record of William Julius Wilson walking away from the Democratic Socialist Party. So I don't know if he's still a member of that. Again, he's emeritus professor. He's not currently teaching, as far as I know, at Harvard. But there's no record of him leaving the Democratic Socialist Party. I think he still has some socialism ideas, because, again, it's this notion that the government has to step in. And that, you can go to the next slide, please. So
okay.
when the government steps in, that is this focus on class. So class is the main focus. If you look at this in terms of, like, I always do pyramid shapes, not because I'm a Delta, but because it's a good image. So, so at the top of the pyramid would be class, right?
Okay.
And then the idea, if you put all the resources at the top, it trickles down to everyone. So, and that's very important when understanding Thomas Sowell and William Julius Wilson and other people. They're talking about class will be the emphasis here. The government intervenes and makes sure that there's a more level, or if you're talking about equity, it's not just level, it has to really address the disparities for all these different collectives of people. So it can't just be everybody gets it. It has to be some people get more, some people get less. But whatever it is, the class disparities are addressed. But then if you're improving class and reducing class disparities, therefore the trickle-down effect will improve black circumstances. So particularly blacks in the cities who are having issues of poverty, unemployment, and so forth. And that's the whole focus of class for people who emphasize class. And I understand that, because we can't always emphasize race if we feel like it's going to mean that we can't have collaborators. Sometimes as a people, we have to know how to collaborate and say, yes, race is still a component, but we want to find a component to unite. So, there's different images, like if you see Black Panther Party and other people who they would meet with non-black people who are poor, struggling, and they will say, we're all in this together.
We're all in this together.
We're all in this together would be this expectation that we're all challenging the government, we're all demanding more justice in terms of reducing violence overall. We're all talking about reducing the disparities in income, occupation, and therefore it's going to improve all of us, and then black people will be included in that improvement. So that's the whole idea of socialism in that component. All right, you can go to the next slide.
Okay. Oh, was that the last one?
I don't know. Was that the last one? Is that the last one? Oh.
Yep, that was the last one.
That was the last one. Yay. All right, so I talked about William Julius Wilson's hip hop and also the socialism component And when he talks about the declining significance of race, he was not saying that race was not important. He was saying that class is the priority up here, but race interlocks with it, of course. But it's still that you're expecting class to be the emphasis, and then there's a trickle-down effect on race.
Yeah, so this is definitely one of the other sociologists, the other thinkers, thought leaders that we really need to look into. Was not on my radar. Until you presented him, he was not on my radar.
Yeah. So there's so much work that our people do. That's why I tell our people, we have people who are presenting new publications and new ideas, but I always want our people to understand we got some really old black folks ideas. Black folks have done centuries of work on Western Hemisphere. If you're talking about Western Hemisphere, you can look at people like C.L.R. James, but if you're talking about United States of America, we have centuries as well. You can't talk about new stuff and New York Times bestseller books and all that if you haven't taught yourself stuff that our people have done before, because you're not only choosing to be clueless and lacking consciousness and the original term of wokeness, but you're also wanting to celebrate something and pretending it's new without knowing that you're developing. You're adding on to concepts and theories that our people already had. And that's just one of our things about our people, is that we have a tendency to think that we don't have to read, we don't have to listen much to stuff that's not the most popular. I want our people to know, if something's very popular, sometimes you can ignore it because it's popular not for good reasons, okay? Find the less popular things, read about it, learn about it, and then you might get to the more popular things and understand it even more because you understand the origins of the most popular stuff.
Right.
Don't, and I always talk about this whole banned books outrage. Look here, that banned books thing, learn the original stuff, and you have access to all of these books, all of these peer-reviewed journal articles. Read it, learn it. It's not up to any school to teach it. It's 100% up to our families, our communities, and our collectives as a people to teach it. We bring knowledge into the classroom. We bring knowledge into work. There should be reciprocity, but if not, we're still more than prepared to handle it. And that's just how it should be for as a people. So William Julius Wilson again, the socialism component is that dependence on the government. Thomas Sowell was not he's still alive, so he's not a socialist. He does not subscribe to any political party, but he does have socialism components if you break it down, because he emphasizes the role of the government in intervening, because Thomas Sowell thinks that as a people, black people can no longer self-develop. We can no longer have our own spaces as we did a century ago. So like newly immigrated populations of people who are not black can still find that self-development for themselves, but we've been so integrated. And that's where the racial integration focus that William Julius Wilson also takes. The role of racial integration is because we've been here for a long time, so we have to know how to interdevelop while acknowledging the role of racial integration. And Harold Cruz acknowledged that as well, because when you look at the origins of Pan-Africanism, black nationalism, and pro-blackness, it doesn't mean that you are completely creating your own nation. I always have to explain that for black nationalism. For people who say that we're creating our own space 100% and we're creating our own nation 100%, it's a falseness. And I want our people to stop depicting falsehoods to each other in organizations and overall conversations. That's not what black nationalism and Pan-Africanism and other pro-blackness mean. It means that we have spaces just like other racial and ethnic groups have developed. We have spaces, but we know how to interlock with different spaces. We know how to collaborate, develop. We know how to utilize resources that are paid through our taxes while also having our own resources. It supplements each other, and that's how it goes together. So I'm not a socialist because I don't agree with relying on the government to do that much. I don't want government control, because that's what socialism requires, government control. Instead, I believe in integrating components of socialism, preferably African components of socialism, but it's usually going to be European socialism because people will quote Karl Marx directly and indirectly. But I believe in integrating components of socialism with communalism, which is communal.
Okay.
And then integrating that with capitalism, because there is a role of capitalism that can be effective and not harmful. And even Huey P. Newton wrote about the potential role of black capitalism that can be beneficial as long as we're very attentive to it.
I think that has to be a show. That has to be a show because so many of us are anti-capitalist. It's capitalist. It's part of the patriarchy. Hold up. And I think sometimes we conflate things.
Well, okay. A lot of people are just reading and regurgitating stuff that's non-black, and if it is black, when you look in the reference pages, it's mostly non-black citations. It's stuff that does not work for us. Okay, this is why I explain to people, you got to understand the stages of the Black Panther Party. The original Black Panther Party was effective. They had the soup kitchens, food, clothing giveaways. They had the resources for children. They had the corner nursing, medical resources. They did reading and discussion collectives where they disagreed and debated each other to develop knowledge together. They started shifting when they had this image of black men getting out of incarceration, and then this image of them with berets and firearms, and then this whole Lenin-Stalin emphasis, which is, also shaped by Marxism. So those are the three stages, and Black Panther Party failed because they lost track and they focused on this European and even Asian components of radicalism and change making without having some realistic economic goals and health goals for our people, which is what their original purpose was, right? So that's why I share Huey P. Newton's writing, because he started admitting that black capitalism can be effective, but you just have to be very attentive to make sure that black capitalists are not harming anyone to have resources and products and profit. And that's something that you also have to pay attention to every form of government, because if you think that you're going to go to a socialist nation or a communist nation or even a communalist nation and that there's not a hierarchy there and the hierarchy is not formed to harm people, then you're lying. Every form of government economic system has police, military. They have government intervention. They have people who are hierarchies who have the wealth in that nation. That's every form of nation around the world. Even the tiniest collectives of people form hierarchies. That's what humans do, right? And you see what happens when humans think that they're all going to coexist and not rank stuff. Look at what happened with the Occupy movement, right? That didn't have any organization, because again, humans operate based on organization, and organization results in hierarchies. And Dr. Charles Tilly wrote about that when he talks about inequality and categorical inequalities. Whenever you have categories, it's going to result in some kind of rankings happening. So that's just how it happens. So you have to just be attentive into how it's going to operate and what you're going to do about it. You can't pretend that we're all just going to coexist and you're going to ignore that there's going to be a difference in status, decision-making capacity, and so forth. That's around the world. So anyone who thinks that's just a capitalist thing or think it's just a United States of America thing, again, they've romanticized the world, because that's a very tourist mindset. This is where I want people to understand that's the mindset of tourism and even colonialism. Because if you are proud that you are migrating around the world or backpacking across Europe, you've got this image of nomad, sovereign citizen. You have this image that's actually based in this European notion of tourism and colonialism. Because you're going into these spaces not really comprehending the spaces, and you have a mindset that's not the reality. So yes, you do have some African nations, our people, who are giving you discounts on apartments. They're saying, come on over to Ghana. But you have to understand the history of our people migrating since transatlantic slavery to Liberia, and why there was the first Liberian coup d'etat. because the first Liberian presidents and stuff like that, right, being people who are Africans in America due to transatlantic slavery. So the same thing happens in Ghana. The idea when you come to Ghana has to be that you are equipped to have economic success. If you were an economic failure in the United States of America, you're not bringing anything to Ghana.
You're not bringing it here to Ghana.
Like, don't
right.
show up barefoot bragging about being a Ghanaian when you don't understand. There's a reason why Ghana is now showing photos and videos of their new citizens. These are mostly white Europeans and Asians, who many of whom have money. They have certain skill sets, such as technology access, that can contribute to Ghana. So yes, you'll get a discount on some living conditions because it's the idea of reciprocity, which again, that's the economic format. You come in with something, you get something, but you have to have that. If you think that you're going there broke and you're just here because you're African, that's not how this really works. So that's why I want our people to understand this. So, I just want to conclude the William Julius Wilson with an understanding that we have to understand realities. You can't go based on false versions of the world and think that that's the way it's just going to work because you believe that. I want our people to escape that and get to something that's real and do some real changes. And you can think about integrating William Julius Wilson to other people because what he said, he's still valuable. I appreciate him. He has a lot of interviews, a lot of writings. A lot of it's in the shared Google Drive folder. Again, he's still alive. He's 89 years old. You can appreciate him, but I don't agree with all of it, but I agree with components of it that I integrate in my work.
All right. And just to let you know what you've been doing, you've been watching Yeah, I just figured out how to start playing that again. We've transitioned from StreamYard to Riverside, and this is interesting. Another great class. Let's go ahead and bring this to an end. Any last words?
Yeah, so my last words are going to be understanding how to integrate our people's perspectives and approaches. As I'm really big on that. So as Harold Cruz said, we got to develop more of our own concepts, theories, research, and actions as a people. We can integrate different components. We can integrate non-Black components after we have our own. But we can't just disagree with each other as a people and just throw each other away. If you disagree with William Julius Wilson, see what parts of William Julius Wilson is saying that you can integrate with your component. The same thing I say about Thomas Sowell, Harold Cruz, and everyone else. I disagree with components of what some people say all the time. But I'm told to have an open mind for our people. So I'm told that all the time. Our people have some very false depictions of history of our people and all types of stuff. But instead of giving up on our people, I say, okay, let's see what we can collect from this and integrate with that and have a larger approach instead of always going toe-to-toe with each other like a horrible boxing match. So, yeah.
Okay. I guess that's it for this time. And I can't wait till next week. I think next week I really want to hear that hip-hop thing you got going on.
Yeah, and that's going to be 2 weeks from now, right?
2 weeks from now. Yep.
Yeah, 2 weeks. I was thinking about that. I think we should talk about hip hop. I was just going to say that.
All right. Well,